silence filled the house after my husband Malcolm's funeral. His favorite chair still faced the window. The air still carried the scent of his cologne, and every corner whispered memories that refused to fade. I thought grief would come as tears, but instead, it came as stillness days that felt too quiet to breathe in. 3 days later, my sister Jasmine invited me to her home. Her son Devin was celebrating his birthday, and though I wanted to stay wrapped in sorrow, something inside me said I should go. Maybe being around family would help. I dressed in black again, Malcolm's absence still heavy on my heart, and drove through the cold, wet streets that blurred behind my tears. When I arrived, laughter floated from the living room. Balloons, cake, the sound of children playing, it all felt distant, like I was watching someone else's happiness from behind a glass wall. Jasmine greeted me with her usual warmth, yet her eyes carried something deeper. Something she tried to hide. "Regina," she said softly. "I didn't expect you to come." "I couldn't miss Devin's day," I replied. Forcing a smile, for a while, everything seemed normal. We cut the cake, sang songs, and watched Devin blow out the candles. He looked so much like Jasmine, his bright eyes. His small smile, but there was something familiar in him I couldn't quite name. Then it happened. Hook. Have you ever heard a sentence that shatters everything you believe about your life? Jasmine called everyone's attention. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. "There's something I need to say," she began. The room fell silent. Devin held her hand. I felt my stomach tighten. "Regina," she said slowly, "my son Devin is Malcolm's child." The air vanished from the room. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stared at her, unable to move, unable to understand. "My husband? Her child?" People gasped. My mother covered her mouth. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. "What did you just say?" I whispered. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed firm. "Malcolm told me before he passed. He left a will, Regina. Everything is written there. Hook, would you dare open a letter that could rewrite your whole past?" I felt my hands shake as she reached into her bag and pulled out a folded document. It looked worn, the ink smudged by time and guilt. "He wanted you to know," she said. "He didn't want to leave secrets behind." For a moment, all I could hear was the ticking clock on the wall. The room blurred. My chest burned. My mind raced back to the hospital, the way Malcolm held my hand and whispered things I couldn't make out, the way his eyes avoided mine that final night. I took the paper from her, my fingers cold. "Why now, Jasmine? Why after his funeral?" "Because I couldn't hold it any longer," she said. "You deserve to know the truth." I wanted to scream, but no words came. My husband had died only days ago, and now my sister stood before me claiming that her child was his. The betrayal cut deeper than death. Everyone around us stayed frozen. Devin looked confused, unaware of the storm his mother had unleashed. I unfolded the will. Malcolm's handwriting stared back at me, familiar, careful, full of weight. "To my beloved Regina," it began, "and to my son Devin, I leave what remains of me." My breath caught. The room spun again. Hook. Sometimes the dead speak louder than the living. Would you listen or run? I couldn't process it. My husband, my sister, a child who carried his blood. Every piece of my marriage, every memory, every "I love you" we'd shared suddenly felt rewritten. Jasmine tried to speak, but I raised my hand. "Stop. Just stop." She stepped closer. "Regina, he was sick. He didn't know what he was doing. Please understand." But all I could see was Malcolm's face, his gentle smile, his late-night absences, his excuses about work. Pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to complete now fit perfectly into place. Hook. Betrayal doesn't knock, it whispers when your guard is down. The rest of the day blurred. Relatives whispered in corners. Children went quiet. I left without saying goodbye. The road home stretched endlessly under the rain, every drop hitting the windshield like a question I couldn't answer. At home, I sat by Malcolm's photo. His smile looked different now, less comforting, more distant. I wanted to tear it apart, yet I couldn't. Love and anger fought inside me like two storms colliding. That night, I couldn't sleep. Jasmine's words echoed again and again. Devin is Malcolm's child. I opened the drawer beside my bed and pulled out Malcolm's old journal. I hadn't read it since his passing. The first page was blank, but halfway through, there it was, his handwriting again. If you're reading this, Regina, I hope you find peace in knowing the truth. I never meant to hurt you. Hook, what truth could ever bring peace after a wound like that? Tears blurred the words. I felt anger, grief, confusion, all at once. And beneath it all, a quiet question. Why did Jasmine wait until now? Morning came with no answers. Only the ache of knowing the man I loved had lived another life in secret. I promised myself one thing: I would uncover everything. I would find out what Malcolm left behind, and why my sister carried a secret for so long. Because the truth, no matter how painful, deserved to be seen in the light. This was only the beginning. The next morning, sunlight crept through the curtains, but it didn't feel like light anymore. It felt like a spotlight on everything broken in my life. I sat at the table where Malcolm and I used to have breakfast, staring at his empty chair. Every sip of coffee felt heavy, bitter. Hook, what do you do when love dies twice, once in the body and once in truth? My mind replayed Jasmine's words again and again. Devin is Malcolm's child. Could it really be true? How could my own sister hide something like that? I had spent nights at her house, celebrated Devin's birthdays, watched him grow up, never suspecting that the boy carried my husband's blood. I needed proof. I couldn't survive on her words alone. So I decided to visit Malcolm's lawyer, Mr. Robert Morrison, the man who handled all his documents. His office was across town, a quiet building lined with oak furniture and the smell of old paper. He looked up as I entered. Mrs. Williams, I was expecting you. Did Malcolm leave anything else? Anything not shown to me? I asked out Robert's side. He left a sealed file with your name and Jasmine's on it. He said it was to be opened after the funeral. Hook, would you dare open a file that could destroy your last memory of the one you loved? He handed me a thick brown envelope. My hand shook as I broke the seal. Inside were medical records, letters, and a copy of the will Jasmine had mentioned. But one document caught my eye, a medical report from Emory Health Center, dated 4 years ago. Stated that Malcolm had undergone a vasectomy. I froze. That meant it was medically impossible for him to father a child after that date. Devin was born after. I looked up at Robert. This means Devin can't be his son. He nodded slowly. That's correct, unless the records are falsified. My breath hitched. My grief turned into something sharper, a need for truth. Jasmine had lied. But why? Hook, sometimes lies wear the mask of grief. Sometimes they're born from guilt. I thanked Robert and left. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I drove to Jasmine's house. I didn't call first. I needed to see her face when I asked the question that had begun to burn in my mind. When she opened the door, her smile faded instantly. Regina, you shouldn't be here. Tell me the truth, I said. Did Malcolm really father your son? She hesitated, then turned away. Regina, it's complicated. No, it's simple. Either he did or he didn't. I stepped closer. I saw his medical reports, Jasmine. He couldn't have any more children after 2018. Her face turned pale. You went through his papers? Don't you dare turn this on me. I shouted. You lied. You used his death to what? Claim his will? His house? Tears welled in her eyes. I was desperate, Regina. You don't know what it's like to raise a child alone. Malcolm helped me, but not the way you think. He signed those papers to protect us. Hook, protection or manipulation. Sometimes the line between the two is razor-thin. My anger trembled into disbelief. Protect you? By lying to his wife? He pitied me, she whispered. He knew I had debts, that Devin's real father abandoned us. He said his name on the will could give us safety, a future. The words sank like stones. Malcolm, the man I loved, had betrayed me, not with love, but with pity. Jasmine covered her face. I didn't want to tell you. I swear, Regina, I didn't. I turned away, my heart hollow. You've taken everything from me. My husband's name, my peace, even my memories. As I walked back to my car, I heard Devon's laughter from the window. That innocent sound pierced me deeper than any lie. The boy had no fault in any of this, yet he carried the shadow of both our mistakes. Hook. What happens when forgiveness is the only way to survive, but the heart refuses to bend? That night, I sat by Malcolm's photo again. For the first time, I didn't cry. I only stared, not at the man I loved, but at the truth he left behind. The next step was clear. If Jasmine wanted protection, I wanted justice. I would uncover every secret Malcolm buried and every lie Jasmine built upon it. The following days passed like slow-moving shadows. Sleep became a stranger, food lost its taste. Every sound, every breath in that house reminded me of Malcolm, but not the Malcolm I had known. Now he was a man of secrets, of unfinished truths, of half-spoken apologies. Hook. Have you ever realized the person you loved most was someone you never really knew? I began sorting through his old papers, boxes stacked in the attic, letters, notebooks, bank statements, things I'd ignored while he was alive. Among them, I found a key labeled Office Private. I didn't remember him ever mentioning a private office. I drove downtown to the small building he used for work. The lock clicked open easily. Inside, dust danced in the sunlight. His desk was still in place, the same pens, the same frame of our wedding day, only now it felt staged. Like a set built for a story that wasn't real. In the bottom drawer, I found a folder marked Devon. My heart pounded. Inside were documents, medical forms, payments, letters to Jasmine. But at the end of the folder, one page stood out, a handwritten note from Malcolm. If anything happens to me, tell Regina everything. She deserves the truth. I tried to fix what I broke, but some things can't be undone. Hook, what would you do if the truth you hunted began to hurt more than the lies? My tears blurred the ink. I took a deep breath, opened another envelope tucked behind the letter, a hospital receipt. It showed Jasmine's name and an address for a specialist clinic. I didn't know what to make of it, but my instincts told me it was connected. That evening, I called the number on the receipt, pretending to be Jasmine. The nurse confirmed an appointment, not for Devon, but for Jasmine herself. It was dated just a few months before Malcolm's death. The reason, genetic consultation. The word hit me hard. Genetic. She'd been trying to make her lie believable, forging papers. Maybe even planning a DNA switch. Hook. Some people bury lies so deep they start believing them as truth. I felt my anger grow cold, focused. This wasn't just betrayal. It was manipulation, planned and cruel. I needed evidence strong enough to expose her without hurting Devon. The boy was innocent. The sins belonged to the adults. The next day, I met Robert, the lawyer, again. I placed the folder on his desk. Tell me, can this prove fraud? He examined the pages carefully. Yes, but if you go through with this, Jasmine could lose custody of her son, her home, everything. She already took everything from me, I said quietly. Robert nodded. Then we'll proceed legally. But, Regina, think before you destroy your sister's life. Revenge doesn't heal. Hook, when justice and revenge look alike, how do you tell them apart? His words followed me home. That night, I looked through old photos, me and Jasmine as children, our mother braiding our hair, Malcolm smiling between us. Once, we were a family. Now we were ruins built on secrets. Still, I couldn't stop. I printed copies of the documents, recorded my findings, and prepared to confront Jasmine, not in anger this time, but with truth as my only weapon. The next morning, I went to her house again. She looked tired, older somehow, as if guilt had started carving her face. Regina, she whispered, please. I can't do this anymore. I'm not here to fight, I said. I just need you to admit it. For once, be honest. Tears rolled down her cheeks. You're right. Devin isn't Malcolm's son. I lied. But I never meant to destroy you. I was drowning in debt, and Malcolm promised to help. He said putting Devin's name in the will would protect him. I let fear control me. Hook. Fear makes people do unforgivable things, yet we still call it survival. For a long time, we stood there in silence. Then I said, you should go to the lawyer and confess. End this before it destroys you completely. She nodded weakly. Will you forgive me someday? I don't know, I replied. But I'll try. For Devin. I turned to leave, but she caught my hand. Regina, there's one more thing. Something you haven't seen yet. She walked to a drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. Malcolm gave me this before he died. He said if you ever came for the truth, I should give it to you. My chest tightened as I took it. On the front, in Malcolm's handwriting, were the words, for Regina, when you're ready. Hook. Sometimes the hardest answers wait in the quietest envelopes. I didn't open it there. I held it close, afraid of what it might hold. Another confession, another wound. I drove home under the fading sun, the envelope beside me, my heart pounding with questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. That night, I placed it on the table. The lamp flickered. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and broke the seal. What I read next would change everything again, not just about Malcolm, but about the life I thought I understood. The envelope trembled in my hands. I unfolded the letter carefully, afraid that the words inside might break me again. Malcolm's handwriting, neat and calm, stared back like a voice from the grave. My dearest Regina, if you're reading this, I am gone. I never found the courage to tell you what I should have long ago. I made mistakes, not of love, but of fear. You were my heart, but I lived two lives. One with you and one filled with regret. Hook, have you ever opened a letter that made you love and hate the same person at once? I read every line slowly. Malcolm confessed that years before our marriage, he had dated Jasmine briefly. When she became pregnant, she told him she lost the baby. He never knew the truth, that Devin had survived, until years later when Jasmine came to him in desperation. She was drowning in debt, alone, ashamed. He helped her secretly, believing it was his duty. But there was more. Malcolm revealed that during his illness, Jasmine began manipulating him, threatening to expose their past if he didn't sign a will in her favor. He feared a scandal would destroy me. He was weak, and guilt made him comply. I wanted to fix it before I died. He wrote. I planned to change the will back, but I ran out of time. The real documents are hidden in my study. Robert knows where. Please find them and clear my name. Hook, what if your love's last act wasn't betrayal, but an unfinished apology? My eyes blurred. I pressed the letter against my chest, torn between grief and relief. Malcolm had failed me, but he had also tried to make it right. Jasmine's lie wasn't born from his desire. It was born from her fear and control. That night, I went straight to Robert's office again. When I showed him the letter, he read it silently, then nodded. He told me he wanted to rewrite his will, but he didn't live long enough to sign it. I have the draft in my safe. He unlocked the drawer and handed me a sealed folder. Inside was the corrected will, naming me as the sole inheritor of Malcolm's estate, and confirming that Jasmine and Devin had no legal claim. Hook, justice doesn't erase pain, but it steadies the soul. I exhaled deeply, as if releasing months of suffocation. This means Jasmine forged her version? I asked. Robert nodded grimly. Yes, and that's a criminal offense. But what do you want to do, Regina? Press charges? I stared at the document, thinking of Devin's face, innocent, unaware. No, I said quietly. Let the truth be enough. Still, I couldn't leave it unresolved. I drove to Jasmine's house one last time. She opened the door, her eyes red from crying. You found it, didn't you? Yes, I said. Malcolm wrote to me. He told me everything. She nodded slowly, her voice breaking. I knew this day would come. Why did you do it? I asked softly. You had me, your sister, all these years. Why turn love into deceit? Jasmine sank into a chair, hands shaking. Because I was jealous, Regina. You had the life I dreamed of, a husband, a home, respect. I lost everything. When Malcolm helped me, I felt power again. But lies grow, and soon I couldn't stop. Hook. Jealousy starts as a whisper, but it ends like a fire. I watched her sob quietly, realizing that punishment wouldn't heal either of us. I'm not pressing charges, I said. But I'm done protecting your secrets. Devin deserves the truth one day. From you, not from anyone else. She nodded. You're right. I'll tell him when he's old enough. The silence that followed was heavy but final, the kind that ends one story and begins another. I walked out without looking back. That night, I sat at Malcolm's grave. The wind was cold, but my heart was calmer than it had been in weeks. I placed the letter there under the flowers. You should have trusted me, I whispered. But I forgive you. Hook, forgiveness isn't saying it's okay. It's saying the pain will no longer own you. As the moonlight washed over the tombstone, I realized that love, even broken, leaves something behind, the strength to rebuild. But my story with Jasmine wasn't over yet. A week later, I received a call that would pull me back into the storm I thought I'd escaped. It was the hospital. Devin had been admitted. Something was wrong, and with that call, the past came rushing back. The call came just before dawn. The hospital voice was calm, professional, but my heart began to race the moment I heard the name. Mrs. Williams, this is Emory Health Center. Your nephew Devin has been admitted. You're listed as emergency contact. For a moment, I couldn't speak. What happened? He collapsed at school. Nothing critical yet, but we need a guardian here. Hook, sometimes life pulls you back to the very pain you're trying to escape. I drove through the gray morning streets. Hands gripping the wheel, thoughts tangled between fear and resentment. Jasmine hadn't called me. When I reached the hospital, I saw her sitting in the waiting area, pale, trembling. She looked up, surprised. Regina, I didn't think you'd come. I was listed as contact, I said quietly. What happened to him? The doctors are running tests, she said, her eyes filled with panic. They said something about his blood type not matching mine. The words hit me like a cold wave. What do you mean? I don't know, she whispered. They said it's not possible for a mother and child to have these differences. Hook, what if the truth you buried starts digging its way back up? Minutes later, the doctor arrived. Mrs. Williams? He said, looking between us. We need to clarify something. According to the tests, Miss Jasmine is not biologically related to the boy. Are you sure there hasn't been an adoption or a switch at birth? Jasmine froze, color draining from her face. That's impossible, she whispered. I gave birth to him. The doctor shook his head gently. DNA testing shows otherwise. We'll need more information. I stood there speechless, the hallway spinning around me. If Jasmine isn't his mother, I said slowly, then who is? Hook, every secret hides another. Sometimes the deepest one hides in plain sight. The doctor hesitated. The boy's file lists a possible paternal connection. Malcolm Williams, but the maternal DNA matches. Yours, Mrs. Williams. Time stopped. My breath caught. I stared at him, trying to understand. Mine? He nodded. Yes, Devin's biological mother is you. My legs gave way. The room fell silent except for the sound of my heart pounding. Jasmine covered her face and began to sob uncontrollably. I didn't mean for you to find out like this, she cried. Find out what? I demanded. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. Devin, he's your son, Regina. The baby you lost 20 years ago. Huck, imagine losing your child, only to find he'd been living beside you all along. My world shattered again. You told me he died. I shouted. You said there were complications. Jasmine nodded, trembling. He was born early. The doctors said he wouldn't survive. But he did, and when I saw you in so much pain, I couldn't tell you. I told everyone he was mine. I thought I could raise him, keep him safe. You were struggling and I was alone. I didn't mean to steal him, Regina. I just couldn't let you know I lied. I staggered back, unable to breathe. All the years of birthdays, hugs, laughter. I had loved Devin without knowing he was my own blood. The doctor quietly excused himself, leaving us in the hollow silence of truth. Hook. The deepest betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from those who swore they loved you. I looked at Jasmine, tears blurring my vision. You took my child, I whispered. My son. You watched me grieve while you raised him in front of me. She fell to her knees. I'm sorry. I've carried this secret for 2 decades. Every day I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't bear losing him. Or you. I couldn't find anger anymore. Only emptiness. Devin's laughter echoed faintly from the ward down the hall. My son, alive, innocent, unaware. I walked toward his room, stood by the glass window, and saw him asleep. His face looked so much like Malcolm's that I felt my knees weaken. Maybe fate had its cruel way of stitching pain into miracles. Hook. Sometimes love hides behind lies, waiting years for its name to be spoken. I whispered to the window. You're mine, my boy. You always were. Behind me, Jasmine's sobs filled the corridor. I didn't turn back. The truth had finally surfaced, and nothing could bury it again. But the hardest part was still to come, telling Devin who he truly was. The next morning, I stood outside Devin's hospital room, holding the truth like a weight I could barely lift. He was awake now, reading a comic, his small smile lighting up the sterile space. For a moment, I wished I could pretend nothing had changed. But lies had already stolen too many years. Hook. How do you tell a child that his whole life was built on someone else's silence? I walked in slowly. Hey, Devin, I said softly. How are you feeling? He smiled weakly. Better, Aunt Regina. The doctors say I just need rest. My throat tightened at the word aunt. Devin, there's something important I need to tell you. About who you are? About us. He tilted his head, confused. What do you mean? I sat beside his bed, my hands trembling. The doctors ran some tests. They found out something. Something I didn't know either. Devin, I'm not just your aunt. I'm your mother. The words hung in the air, fragile and final. Devin blinked, trying to understand. My mom? Yes, I whispered. You were born early and I was told you didn't survive. But Jasmine, she took care of you. She raised you. She did love you, even if she made terrible choices. Hook, truth can break hearts, but sometimes it frees them too. Devin's eyes filled with tears. So Aunt Jasmine isn't my mom? I shook my head gently. She's your aunt? My sister. She lied, but she kept you alive, and I can't hate her for that. He looked down at his hands. All this time, you were my mom, and I didn't even know. I reached out and took his hand. You've always known, somewhere deep inside. That's why we were close. That bond, it never left us. He cried quietly, and I held him, feeling the years between us melt away. For the first time in decades, I felt whole again. Hook, sometimes love doesn't return in the way we expect. It finds its way through loss, through lies, through time. Later that day, Jasmine came into the room. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale. She looked at Devin, then at me. I'll go, she whispered. No, I said. You'll stay. He deserves both of us, at least for now. Devin reached out and took her hand. Mom, I mean Aunt Jasmine. I still love you. She broke down completely, collapsing beside his bed. I'm so sorry, she said over and over. I looked at them both, my sister, my son, and realized that forgiveness was not something you give once. It's something you live every day. Hook. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain. It lets love breathe again. Months passed. Devin recovered fully. I took legal guardianship and Jasmine began therapy. Our family was broken, but somehow still standing. We visited Malcolm's grave together, placing fresh flowers and a note written by Devon. "Thank you for keeping me safe. I'll make you proud." The wind carried the words away, and for the first time, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like release. Now, when I look back, I don't see betrayal anymore. I see survival. I see a boy who found his real mother. I see two sisters who learned that truth, no matter how late, can still heal. Hook. Maybe the golden age of a story isn't when everything is perfect. It's when people finally find peace after the storm. If you've listened this far, remember, secrets destroy, but truth rebuilds. And sometimes love comes back when you least expect it, in the voice of a child telling you, "Mom,